Well, folks, today we are going to be taking a look at my top 5 Senate races to watch in the 2026 midterms. This Senate map is hugely favored for the Republican Party in 2026 just by the way the map is and who is up for re-election. Democrats are left defended many competitive seats with not a lot of options to go on the offensive. Meanwhile, the Republicans have the exact opposite problem, where they have unlimited possibilities to pick up seats and very few competitive races that they need to spend a lot of money to defend relative to the Democrat Party. So we're going to jump into all of it today. But before we do, drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video again in the future. So we're going to start out with number 5. The number 5 Senate race to watch in 2026 is the Maine Senate race. This is the re-election campaign for incumbent Senator Susan Collins. We know Collins was initially elected back in 1996, was then re-elected in 2002, re-elected in 2008, 2014, 2020, and then she is now up for re-election in 2026 to serve another 6-year term. Initially, won back in 1996 with about 6% margin, didn't crack 50%, but would go on to 2002, won against a representative at the time, or she would become a representative by roughly about 18 points in that race. Fast forward to 2008, she beat her opponent out by over 20 points in this election. We're talking almost 25 points in a year that was great for Democrats and President Obama. We're going to look at the 2008 presidential election. We're going to go down to, obviously you can see that it was won by President Obama, but I just like to point this out. I think it is always great to see. Maine at whole, 57% support for Barack Obama. In that same election, Susan Collins got 61%. She got more support than President Obama did in this state. And this is a lean, if not safe, Democrat seat. I say this to show the amount of support that Susan Collins has in the state. Even though it is a left-leaning state, you have a liberal governor, a liberal legislator there. But still, somehow, Susan Collins is able to win support year in and year out, whether it is a bad year for Republicans like 2008, or it is an excellent year for Republicans like 2014. Or once again, a tighter year for Republicans, she's still able to win. She still knows how to win. This is the power. Now, there's a lot of people in the Republican Party who do not like Susan Collins. And, part of me gets it because, you wish she would vote with you 100% of the time. But the reality is she doesn't. The reality is that it's either you are going to have a Republican, a good Republican like Susan Collins, who's going to vote with you 80% of the time, 85% of the time, or you're going to have a Democrat that votes with you 1 or 2% of the time. That is your option. I will choose a Republican who's going to defect from the party 10, 15, 20% of the time versus a Democrat who is almost never going to vote with the Republican Party. That is just the reality. So in this race coming up here, really her biggest challenger, it's expected that Jared Golden, I believe he is already, I know this says he hasn't filed paperwork yet, but I believe he's come on and said that he is most likely going to jump in this race here, along with the former president of the Maine Senate, Troy Jackson, current Governor Janet Mills, who is currently in her own spat with President Trump when it comes to funding for the university system, and the university system allowing transgender individuals. That is not okay. We cannot allow mentally ill men to compete in women's sports. We cannot allow these mentally ill men to change in women's locker rooms, and we can't allow them to use women's restrooms in public. It's just as simple as that. And Janet Mills has her own little battle with the federal government right now. We will see how that all plays out. And then Representative Pingree from Maine's 1st Congressional District since 2009. Obviously, we saw she was Susan Collins' first opponent in her first re-election race in 2002. Now, right now, the general predictions have it that this is a lean Republican state and also a battleground state. I would say on my map right now, I am putting this as a lean Democrat state. Even if Jared Golden jumps in this race, I think it might be a little tighter. But ultimately, I think this is a lean. Now, I should say that on here, I believe this is a safe, secure, lean, and slight. It's kind of what my terminology I use. I don't follow what everybody else does. I kind of do my own thing, and I don't really care. But this obviously is going to be a huge race for a couple reasons. Reason number one, this is one of the few places the Democrats have the ability to go on the offensive. Like I said earlier, they don't have a lot of places where they can go on the offensive. Right now, the Democrats hold Minnesota, Michigan, Georgia, and New Hampshire. Republicans hold Maine and North Carolina. Out of the so-called swing states that are up for re-election, and really I just consider it, if there's a race that I think is going to be within 5 points, or that the Democrats or Republicans are looking to pour a lot of money into, we're going to cover it. We can see where they're where the national senatorial committees are looking to put their money. We can clearly see here the Democrats are left defending an open seat in Minnesota, an open seat in Michigan, a very, very vulnerable Democrat in John Ossoff in Georgia, an open seat in New Hampshire. That's what the Democrats have right now. Not looking great. Meanwhile, the Republicans have to defend North Carolina, which that's going to be the tightest one. I think for the Republicans will be North Carolina. And then, like I said, Maine, which we are put in as a lean state as of right now. Now, there are some things that we could see tighten this race up. The overall trend of where the country is going. That could be a big part of it. Right now, it really seems like President Trump and his policies are very popular, but their base is made up of low propensity voters. So in these special and off-year elections, it is a struggle to get those people out to vote when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. How is the Republican Party going to grapple with that reality? The Democrats are much more engaged, whether the election is in April or November or whenever it is. Democrats are more engaged as a base in voting than the Republicans are. It's not even close. And we saw that with the Supreme Court election in Wisconsin a couple nights ago. That's just the reality of this situation here. And Maine is also federally, it is a blue state. Like we said, Kamala carried this state by roughly 7 points. Democrats control the governorship, the state legislature, both seats in Maine's U.S. House congressional delegation. Susan Collins is kind of this one person, and along with Angus King, which he caucuses with the Democrats, he is an independent, but he's a Democrat. And this is, as of right now, is the only Senate seat held by a Republican in a state that voted for Kamala Harris in 2024. And Collins has a very good record of overperformance, even despite the state's Democrat lean at the state and federal level. And it is very safe to say Maine is considered a key Senate battleground in 2026. No doubt about it. But moving on to number 4 at this point, number 4 in my top 5 Senate races to watch in 2026. Number 4 is Minnesota. And I know this may take some people by surprise. I'm from Minnesota. I have a little bit to say about this. Take it with a grain of salt that it's number 4, but I'll explain my thoughts behind this. Obviously, 2026, the Senate election here, we have a vacant seat. Incumbent Senator Tina Smith announced that she would is not going to seek re-election to a second full term. She served part of a term for Al Franken, had to run in 2018 to serve the rest of it in the special election, won in 2020 after winning that special election in 2018 to complete a full term from 2020 to 26. She has now decided that she is not going to be running. This is the first time there's been a U.S. Senate election in Minnesota without an incumbent senator since 2006. 2006, because we have the wonderful Amy Klobuchar. Wonderful. That lady is just wonderful. No, she's not the biggest fan of her. But there's a couple things I want to talk about this race. Now, let's first take a look at the 2020 election here. So, Donald Trump lost this state by about 4.5 points here. Do we wish he would have been closer? Of course. In 2016, he was within like a point. So obviously we wish that margin was a lot smaller here. But there are a couple things that I'd like to talk about when it comes to this race here. in order for this to be a potential flip for the Republicans, obviously the Democrats hold it right now, and I would say as of right now, I consider this a Democrat-lean state as of right now. Now, there were a lot of people in this race to get started. Peggy Flanagan, right after Tina Smith announced that she was not running, Peggy Flanagan within hours jumped the gun since she was going to be jumping in this race. There was even some ideas that maybe Tim Walz was going to jump in here, and there's some pretty big issues between Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota and Governor Tim Walz. She was doing a lot of things while he was out on the campaign trail with Kamala Harris that he did not like, and she was really preparing to kind of leapfrog him when it came to the Biden order in Minnesota Democrat politics. Peggy Flanagan right now has the endorsement of a number of different people, including Keith Ellison. I know they say, here's the reality. They say Tim Walz didn't endorse anyone. He basically has endorsed Angie Craig. Anyone who has listened to what he said over the last couple months knows that she's almost a de facto next candidate in the line of Tim Walz. So Peggy Flanagan, she right now is leading the pack. And I have said this from the beginning. There is a 3-part equation that has to come true if the Republicans want to win this seat. If the Republicans want to win this seat, there needs to be 3 keys. You know, Alan Lichtman's guy has his 13 keys. I have my 3 keys for turning Minnesota red in this Senate race here. Number 1, the Democrats need to nominate a radical Democrat. They need to nominate a Democrat who is out there on a lot of issues, including immigration, who picks the bad side of these issues, who is against mass deportation, someone who wants transgender men in women's sports, someone who wants to keep the bloat in our government, who doesn't support DOGE. Different stuff like that. Really radical Democrats who want to push the radical Green New scam, who want to spend trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars a year that basically will get funneled to their donors through their NGOs and other nonprofits, where then the executives make $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 a year on the boards of these nonprofits. So number 1, they need to nominate a radical Democrat. Peggy Flanagan meets that threshold. Initially, I had said Keith Ellison, Ilhan Omar, Melissa Hortman, or Peggy Flanagan. In the order, I would say the most radical is Ilhan Omar, followed by Ellison, followed by Flanagan. But they're all pretty damn close when it comes to their actual views that they have. Peggy Flanagan is radical, and with a little bit of money, they can uncover really how radical she is and promote that in the state of Minnesota. So, support is coalescing behind Peggy Flanagan. Obviously, Omar still could jump in this race. Please, God, please nominate Ilhan Omar. Please hand this seat to the Republican Party. But if we continue to see more support coalesce behind a radical Democrat like Peggy Flanagan or Ilhan Omar at this point and not Angie Craig, I don't like Angie Craig. I think she's a terrible politician. But when it comes to how crazy she is, on the spectrum of just Democrats, she's like a 50 when it comes to being crazy, when Ilhan Omar is like an 80 or 90 when it comes to how freaking crazy you can get. She's still pretty far out there, but relative to where the most of the Democrat Party is, she's actually not that crazy, which isn't saying anything about her. It just says how freaking radical crazy the Democrat Party is right now. So they need to nominate a radical liberal. Number 2, it's kind of a 2-part series for number 2. Number 1, for number 2, it is the Republicans cannot nominate Royce White. That is number 1. They cannot nominate Royce White. Royce White was a terrible candidate in Congressional District 5 in 2022. He was a terrible nominee for the U.S. Senate in 2024. This is the guy who 85% of his donations that went to him actually got funneled and were paid to credit card fees. This guy is crazy. It's like, there are a lot of policies that I believe, that I support, that he supports. But you're not going to win in Minnesota, bud. You are just not going to win in Minnesota. It's not going to happen, Royce. You are not going to win this Senate seat. You are not going to win a statewide election in Minnesota. I don't know what happened in the NBA if you got your head knocked a couple times, but something is clearly wrong with you. This guy he's on X all day long, gets into fights in the comment sections with tons of people. This guy does not have the mental stability to be a senator from Minnesota. So you can't nominate Royce White, and you need to nominate a moderate conservative, someone like a Susan Collins, someone who is going to vote with the party 80% of the time, but on those 20% of issues is where they really garner a lot of that support from Democrats and independents and moderates in the state. Maine is a left-leaning state, but they elect Susan Collins. You need to find something like that. I think you can do that. I was in favor of Tim Pawlenty. Honestly, was a little disappointed that he's not throwing his hat in this ring. I would have liked Tim Pawlenty to jump in this race. I really would have liked to see it. I think Ryan Wilson, he was the nominee for state auditor in 2022. In 22, those midterms, he ran the closest election with the Democrats. I think he only lost by a little less than 20,000 votes, maybe 19 or 18,000 votes. Very, very close race. Not saying he's the most popular person, but I believe when you're looking for a good, moderate, still America first, but moderate candidate who can win in a left-leaning state, I think Ryan Wilson is one of those people who can do that. I also think someone like, and now he's not on this list here, but Jim Schultz. He was the nominee for Attorney General in 2022 against Keith Ellison. I thought he ran a great campaign. I think the overall tide of the country was against the Republican Party, and that hurt him. If it was more like a true midterms in 2022, I think you would have seen Ryan Wilson and Jim Schultz win. I don't think Walz would have lost. I don't think Klobuchar, or no, who was up for re-election? She wasn't. We didn't have a senator up for re-election in 22. But ultimately, you need to have a moderate candidate. Even someone like a Michelle Tafoya or a Julia Coleman. I would absolutely love to see something like that, a more moderate candidate. And number 3, you need to have massive funding from the National Senatorial Republican Committee. Now, on their pecking order, the Republicans, the National Senatorial Republican Committee, which they fundraise and help fund a lot of these campaigns for Senate, have put Minnesota as like their number 4 target. They have Michigan, Georgia, New Hampshire are their top targets. Minnesota is their number 4 target on this list. So if those 3 things can coalesce and come together, and I think part of it, and there has to be a number 4 in there, but the tide of the country has to be going towards the Republicans, which as of right now, it doesn't seem like it's going to look that way in 2026. We're going to see a lot to come out, especially with Trump, what Trump's doing with tariffs right now. I'm all about reciprocal tariffs. I'm all about decoupling from China. I'm all about putting tariffs on Mexico. I am not about whatever the hell Trump did yesterday with this Liberation Day. I'm all about the concept of reciprocal tariffs. But that is not what he implemented yesterday. What he implemented yesterday was putting tariffs on allies of the United States. Basically saying, hey, we've determined that your tariffs on the United States are 70%. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at Trump's tariff tariff chart. Let's look at South Korea here. I want the actual damn chart that they sent out that we were looking at. Okay, here we go. So the tariffs charged to the USA. They're saying that South Korea is charging a 50% tariff on the United States, and we're going to put a 25% tariff on them. Are you kidding me? We have a free trade agreement. We effectively South Korea has like a 0.8% tariff rate on our products that get sent there. It's like, this is a joke. This is not real. This is not the tariff that is being charged on the United States. Not in the slightest. Not in the freaking slightest. I wonder if we have, let's see if we can find Israel on here. They're saying that Israel is charging us 33% tariffs. They literally just took down every single tariff they had on United States imports. It's at 0. Okay, are you going to say between currency manipulation and other ways that they're able to really effectively keep America out of their market? Really? 33%? This is a joke. This isn't reciprocal tariffs. This is a freaking joke. And if Trump and Republicans continue to do this, and Trump constitutionally may not even have the ability to do this. In my purview, I do not believe that a trade deficit with another country constitutes a emergency declaration. I agree. We need to have an emergency declaration with Mexico when it comes to fentanyl and illegal immigration. We need to have an emergency declaration with China. Because of they're an adversary, supply chains, and the fentanyl that flows into the United States. 100% agree. We need to tariff the hell out of them to get them to do what we want them to do, especially China, to decouple from China. We need to push China out of the world economy is what I want to do. We should not be doing business with China anymore. We should do everything we can to decouple with China. In Mexico, they can be a great trading partner. First of all, you need to stop illegal immigration from coming into the United States. Number two, you need to make sure that fentanyl does not flow into the United States anymore, or significantly reduce the amount of fentanyl that gets into the United States. Period. End of discussion. If the Trump administration keeps doing stupid crap like this, because that's what this is stupid. I support reciprocal tariffs. I support tariffs as leverage. I support tariffs on China. I support tariffs on Mexico. I do not support whatever the hell this is right here. I don't support this. I support the concept, but if you're going to tell me that South Korea is currently charging the United States 50% tariffs, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. No data. Show me the data that proves that. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. It just doesn't. So if Trump keeps doing this, I think you can almost kiss Minnesota goodbye. Because Poland right now, even in the Democrat Party, internal, Peggy Flanagan's leading. They're going to nominate a radical. But it's kind of weird. It's not even like a slight. It's like it's either you have two lean Democrat positions and then one prediction that shows that it's a battleground. Like I said, I think as of right now, I'm putting this as a lean Democrat state. Now moving on to number 3. Number 3 Senate race to watch in 2026 is the state of North Carolina. Why the state of North Carolina? Well, that is because incumbent Senator Tom Tillis, who was reelected back in 2020, I think for his first reelection, he was elected back in 2014 initially, beat incumbent Senator Kay Hagan, beat her roughly by about 1.5 points, went on in 2020 to win re-election once again by a little bit healthier margin, by closer to 2 points. In 2020, he won. This is one of the swing states that Trump won in 2020, even though he lost the election. This was a state that Trump was able to carry, and also Tom Tillis was able to win his seat again. Now, jumping forward to 2026, like we said, 48.7% of the vote in 2020 went to Tom Tillis. Even though now the Republican Party has censored Tom Tillis 2 different times on gun control and same-sex marriage on one of them, and then the other one was for Tom Tillis trying to form a bipartisan coalition of senators to pass an immigration bill before the 2024 election, which was a joke. He was one of these people who was pushing for this immigration bill. We needed legislation. We didn't need any legislation. We did not need legislation. We needed a new president. That's what we needed. A president who would enforce the law. He was one of these Republican senators who was pushing for amnesty in this bill, who was going to be okay with amnesty for the 10 million illegal immigrants that are in the country, maybe even 20 million. I'm going to say 10 million just under Biden. Who knows how many other tens of millions are in the country? Because we know it would have screwed the Republican Party when they did the census in 2030. Because we know in the census that they do not count. It is not done by legal status. If they live in that state, they are counted in that state, regardless of their immigration status. And we know that North Carolina is considered to be a purplish state. It's a purplish to slight red state on the federal level. Yes, slight state, lean. It's a purple state at the state level. Federal level, it's a lean Republican state. It was a top battleground state in the 2020 race and in the 24 race. Now, the state backed the Republican nominee Donald Trump in 2020 by 1.3 points and 3.2 points in the 2024 election when he was reelected. Now, both the Democrats and Republicans have seen successes in this state in recent years. where the Republicans control both chambers of the North Carolina legislature. They hold a supermajority in the North Carolina House, or the U.S. House delegation, as well as the state Senate seat. However, the Democrats have seen a decent amount of success in statewide races, including in 2024, where they won half of the state executive offices. You have a Democrat governor. I believe you have a Democrat attorney general. I'm going to see what it was in North Carolina. Let's see what it is right now. Look at this. You have a current Democrat governor, Democrat lieutenant governor, Democrat secretary of state, Democrat superintendent, Democrat attorney general. Really? And Democrats in the state know how to win. They know how to win, especially people like Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper won his election in 2016 to become the next governor at the same time when Trump won. And he won re-election in 2020 at the same time Trump did. And now Josh Stein. Now you can say there were some issues with the 2024 governor's gubernatorial race in North Carolina, especially when it came to the Republican nominee. I don't even want to bring his name up, but Mark Robinson. It makes sense why the Republicans lost, but that really hurt them down ballot. Really hurt them down ballot. Very much so. And it is very fair to say that Tom Tillis is going to have a primary within inside of the Republican Party. There was polling that was done that showed that he was losing to someone who's not even in the race. Let's see. He better not be. No, this is the 2024. Look at this. Laura Trump versus Tom Tillis. Laura Trump beats him. 65%. Oh my God. Look at this right here from November. Generic Republican beats out Tom Tillis. The only person Tom Tillis wins against is Mark Robinson. Which, if Mark Robinson runs, you can just this and somehow becomes the nominee. This race is over. Ultimately, Tom Tillis is going to have a lot of funding. He has a lot of support from senators in the U.S. Senate. There's no doubt about that. But there is some concern that he's been censured twice by the Republican Party in North Carolina. That could be a liability for him when he gets to the general election, where if he does not have enough support, Republicans could choose the couch over voting for him. It's just as simple as that. And Laura Trump, although there's a lot of things that would have to happen, if she jumped in this race, I think it could be tough for him to win. I really do. But we're going to assume that Tom Tillis is leading this race on the Republican side. Jump over to the Democrat side where you have Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper, if he jumps in this race, it's over. It is over in the Democrat primary. The Democrats will nominate Roy Cooper. He is one of these Southern Democrats who knows how to win in Republican states. Kind of like an Andy Beshear in Kentucky. He's kind of like a Sherrod Brown or a Tim Ryan, more a Sherrod Brown in Ohio. He was kind of like a John Tester in Montana. But granted, Sherrod Brown and John Tester are kind of the old Democrats that could win there. But like Andy Beshear shows he knows how to win. There's no doubt about that. Look at someone like Josh Shapiro. He is a Democrat who's popular. It's a purple state, don't get me wrong, but I think there is Republican lean-ins in that state, especially when it comes to the actual policies. Roy Cooper knows how to win in these states. It is just as simple. He knows how to win in these states. He knows how to win in North Carolina. And I think if it is a matchup between Tom Tillis and Roy Cooper, I think it's going to be very tough for the Republicans to hold this seat. I really do. I think there's going to be a lot of money that needs to be poured. So as of for right now, I'm leaving this as a toss-up. If Roy Cooper jumps in this race, I think I would actually put it as a slight Democrat lean-in. I want to see more polling come out here. I want this race to develop more. If Roy Cooper's in this race, slight. As of right now, we're leaving this as a toss-up seed, though. Now, moving on to number 2. The top 2 Senate races, number 2 to watch in the 2026 race. And that will be the great state of New Hampshire, my friends. The great state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a very weird state. We know Jeanne Shaheen, the incumbent Democrat senator who's been there for 2 decades now, maybe close to 3. But 2 decades at least. that has been controlled by Jeanne Shaheen. She announced that she will not be seeking re-election in 2026. And this will be the first open Senate election in New Hampshire since 2010. And a first for this seat since 1990. So as we know, current incumbent Senator Jeanne Shaheen has held this seat really since 2008. I believe she was initially elected. So she ran against John Sununu, who we're going to kind of tie this all back in here in a minute, ran against him in 2002, lost to John Sununu, ran in 2008 against John Sununu again, and ended up beating him by roughly about 6 points. Went on to really win some close elections, dominate some bigger elections like this, and so we're going to see what happens. Why is this my top target? Initially, if Jeanne Shaheen was running for re-election, this would be like number 5, maybe number 6. It was a big target, but because ultimately when Jeanne Shaheen said when we assumed she was running, Chris Sununu, the former governor, said he would not be running in this race, and that's why a lot of people are like, okay, this will probably be a lean Democrat seat. But since Jeanne Shaheen announced she will not be seeking re-election, it has changed the entire ballgame, as Chris Sununu has now publicly expressed interest, saying that he is really looking to run for this Senate race or this seat because he believes he could win it 100%. And we knew New Hampshire is very much a nuanced state, just like all these states we're talking about. All of them are nuanced. But it is a moderate but slightly blue state at the federal level. Kamala won the state by about 3 points in the 2024 presidential election, and the state's congressional delegation has been entirely Democratic since the beginning of Trump's first term. However, Republicans have controlled the governorship for years at this point. They control both state legislative chambers, and they control the majority on the executive council. Wow. Maybe we should trust that the state Republican Party knows what they're doing. This is a state that I think the last time New Hampshire voted for a Republican on the presidential level was 1988. George H.W. Bush. New Hampshire voted for Kamala Harris by about almost 3 points. But yet somehow, Republicans control the governor's mansion. They control the legislative branch, the executive council. Maybe we should trust them. But so let's just look and see who's running. So the U.S. representative from New Hampshire's 1st congressional district, Chris Pappas, actually he just announced, I believe yesterday, that he's going to be running for this race here, put out his first ad stating that he's going to be running, really trying to run as a moderate. I believe when Chris Pappas, he got in this race, I truly believe this is going to clear the field on the Democrat side. I believe that people are going to get behind him. Maybe one of these other representatives is going to jump into this race. Ultimately, this Maggie Goodlander could jump in the race. Ultimately, I believe this is his race if he wants it. Now, on the Republican side, like I said, former governor, very popular governor from the state, Chris Sununu, has said that he really wants to look at jumping in this race. I'm all about that. Because there's something I want to show you. And I think this really, really just shows why we want Chris Sununu in this race. Chris Sununu, initially elected back in 2016, I believe. 2016, he was initially elected and won by a relatively modest amount of about 2.5 points. Went on to 2018 to won re-election. Obviously, they do it every 2 years. They have to run for governor or run for re-election. Chris Sununu ran and won by like 7 points in 2018 in a rough year nationally for the Republican Party. Move on to 2020. This is where things really get interesting. Chris Sununu won re-election in 2020 by almost 35 points. By like 32 points he won this election by. 32 points. 32 points. Are you kidding me? Look at the presidential election in 2020. Joe Biden won the state by 7 points. Meanwhile, Chris Sununu won the state by 32 points. Chris Sununu on the same ballot, literally the same ballot, was able to outrun the Republican by Donald Trump by huge margins. He was able to outrun his opponent by over 30 points. 30 points. Like, look at this. This is all on the same ballot in 2020. Jaheen Shaheen won re-election. Every county voted for her. She won by 16 points, 15 points. Biden won the state by 7 points. It's like, oh my gosh, wow. At the same time that Chris Sununu won every county at the same time. Look at this. You want to go down to the precinct level. Look at that versus that. It's like, oh my gosh. Talk about someone who knows how to win in a race that matters. In a state that is nuanced, that is statewide, it's Republican. Federally, it's liberal. They're going to vote for the liberal candidate. Let's vote. Let's choose a candidate who knows how to win elections as a Republican in this state. It's kind of a similar thing to Maine. You're either going to have a Democrat senator who's going to vote with the party 1 or 2% of the time, or a Republican who's going to vote 80 or 85% of the time. You might be pissed off at that 15% that he doesn't vote for, but it's better than having a Democrat in power, no doubt. So I throw my 100% support behind Chris Sununu in this race. Definitely an election to keep an eye on. It could really show who is going to have balance, and not balance of the Senate or control of the Senate. How large is the margin going to be for the Republicans in the Senate moving forward? And now, drumroll, number one. The number one Senate seat that you should be watching in 2026 is in the great state of Georgia. The great state of Georgia, where you have the most vulnerable Democrat, Senate Democrat up for re-election. He is the only Democrat that is running for re-election in a state that Trump won, he is a Democrat, and that is Jon Ossoff. And I personally think Jon Ossoff is a pretty pathetic person. I think he pretends to be this moderate, and he's just not. He's not. He voted to block a arms sale to Israel. He's anti-Israel. He voted to allow mentally ill men to go into women's bathrooms. Yeah, nope. No, I'm just not about that at all. I am not about that BS at all. He wants to act like he's this great moderate, but yet voted with Joe Biden 98% of the time. So let's just start off with one thing. Do not let him fool you and make you think that he is somehow this moderate. He's a pseudo-moderate. No, he's not. He 100% is not. And we know Georgia is a swing state. It has been trending to the left more and more every election cycle. And it's federally, it's a swing state. But on the state level, it is a lean Republican state. Trump won this state by about 5 points in 2016. Biden won it by 0.2%, 0.3% in 2020. And then Trump won it again by 2.5 points in 2024. Now, to show that this, with the right candidate, this state is moving to the right. Where do we have to look? We have to look at the 2022 Georgia gubernatorial election. There's a lot to take away from this election and Brian Kemp's initial election. Brian Kemp only won re-election, or his first election in 2018 by about, a point and a half. But somehow with his strong Republican governance, strong conservative values, and even with the tide against him, the national tide against the Republicans in 2022, he was able to win re-election by almost 8 points. Almost 8 points. We know that Brian Kemp can win in a state that has now become a purple state. He knows how to win here. And Georgia currently has 2 Democrat senators. They both were elected in 2020. And the primaries are currently going to be held in about the summer of 2016. And I do expect big names to jump in, but I expect Brian Kemp to lead this race. In 2022, Senator Raphael Warnock was running for re-election to serve a full 6-year term. And Donald Trump decided that he wanted to back a former football star, Herschel Walker, which turned out to be devastating in the state. He decided to back Herschel Walker instead of the more established Republican candidate, David Perdue, who was much more likely to win this election. Due to poor candidate quality, Raphael Warnock ended up going on to win re-election at the same time that Brian Kemp also won re-election by 8 points. Warnock won by about a point or two in that election. Meanwhile, Brian Kemp won in that same state by 8 points. People cry about election fraud. So you're telling me that they committed election fraud, but they only committed election fraud at the senatorial level. They didn't try and commit election fraud at the gubernatorial level. Yeah, that just makes perfect sense to anyone with a brain. And flippin', this Senate seat is a top priority, should be the number one priority for Senate Republicans in 2026. Ossoff is seen as the most vulnerable Democrat in 2026. He is just the right candidate to pick off in this election. He sided with the Democrats, voting against legislation that would keep men out of women's sports, women's bathrooms, women's locker rooms. Even though 80% of the country supports this, they support banning these people, these mentally ill men. But somehow, Democrats unanimously voted against this whole allowing mentally ill men in women's sports. He also voted against a bill that would avoid a government shutdown that was coming up at the time. Seen as really political dynamite, though. A lot of moderates are not going to like that. Democrats may like it. You may bolster your support with the base, but how are moderates and Republicans, which he needs to win, how are they going to see that? And there are a lot of big social media influencers for his vote on protecting women in women's sports. There are huge influencers like DC Drano and Riley Gaines who are promising, publicly stating they're on a mission to make sure he does not win re-election. There's a lot of power going into it. And it is fair to say that if Brian Kemp is in this race, he will beat Jon Ossoff. I don't think he's going to beat him by 8 points, but I think this could be a close race. I really do. I really think this is going to be a close race. And actually, jumping back to New Hampshire, I forgot to tell you, if Sununu jumps in this race, I see it as a lean Republican state. Back to Georgia now. I don't think he's going to win by 8 points if Kemp is in this race. Would Kemp win by 4, 5, 6 points? I think so. The combination of the political baggage that Jon Ossoff is carrying, plus a very strong state candidate in Brian Kemp in this race, could just be the right mixture to beat Ossoff. Plus, of course, you're going to have tons of funding from the National Senatorial Republican Committee that is going to allow Brian Kemp a lot of flexibility and a lot of resources to win this race. And you can't discount Kemp in this. Brian Kemp is a big part of this equation. He is well known, very well liked in Georgia, and has an approval rating of plus 60% in Georgia right now. A state that is supposedly a purple state has the approval rating for a governor that's a Republican by 60%. This is a state that he knows how to win statewide elections, and candidate quality matters. To my Republican friends out there, do not let 2022 happen again. This is a winnable seat, and the National Republicans are going to spend a lot of money to make sure we can win it. Do not screw it up when it comes to the candidate. Because early polling already shows that Brian Kemp is leading by 6-ish points. There's a great poll taken here that showed in this Senegal poll right here. It showed that against, and it also had, the Tyson group was another one. But right here, Jon Ossoff versus a generic Republican, it was tied, 44-44. In this same race here, when they were told, and I wonder if I can pull it up real quick. Do they have it? Let's see. Well, what happened in this poll here, was that when this same group of people that went 44-44 split for Jon Ossoff and the generic Republican, when they were told that Jon Ossoff voted against protecting women in women's sports, all of a sudden, the generic Republican was winning by double digits. And look at this. Brian Kemp, poll after poll, is leading by 3 points, leading by, 7 points? Leading by 6 points. Jon Ossoff is leading every other Democrat, or every other Republican. Brad Raffensperger, Buddy Carter, John King, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mike Collins, Rich McCormick. If you want to run Marjorie Taylor Greene, you might as well just hand the election to Jon Ossoff if we're being 100% honest. Candidate quality matters. Do not mess it up. In that poll from Senecal shows that Republicans should run on that transgender issue. We know one of Donald Trump's most effective ads in the 2024 campaign was the ad about they, them. Kamala Harris is for they, them, and Donald Trump is for you. That was one of the most effective ads in the race. Let's not be afraid to lean into that again. Do not be afraid to lean in to this transgender nonsense that Democrats somehow, they just can't shake it. They can't shake it. Good. Let's beat the hell out of them with it. So we're going to see what happens, but we are 20 months out from this race right here. We're going to be here to keep you updated on all of these races, including the one race that we didn't talk about here was Michigan. That is the one race that we did not talk about here. We didn't talk about it. I decided to keep this out because I feel like there's a lot that still has to develop. There's a lot that is developed in the Minnesota race and the Georgia, North Carolina, New Hampshire, Maine. There's a lot that is developed there. If anything, I would have switched Michigan and Minnesota out, but just because there is a lot more that is developed in the state, we don't know who's going to be leading the Democrat ticket in Michigan. We don't. Pete Buttigieg, not running. Gretchen Whitmer, not running. You look at the Republican side. Mike Rogers potentially could be the nominee, but you also have to look at John James and Tudor Dixon. But then you also have to look at the governor's race, how that all is going to play in. But I promise there's plenty of content on my channel where we're covering that Michigan Senate race. So jump over, watch those videos if you want to see more about that. But we are going to be here to make sure we bring you as much coverage on all of the Senate races. This week, I'm planning to get Senate coverage out for Texas. John Cornyn potentially could be primaried. What could the Tom Tillis primary look like? What could the Bill Cassidy primary look like in Louisiana? There's a lot that we have to dig into all these races, but we are going to be here, the Rife Rundown, the Rife Report. We are going to be here to dig into this, give you our opinions on how we feel this race is, give you as much data as it comes out. Polling, people jumping in the race, people leaving the race, anything that we find applicable, we are going to be here to deliver those results to you. So that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. Drop down below. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you next time.